everyone. My name is Tom Keys, and I'm seriously considering running for state senate again in the Plymouth and Barnstable district. We ran last year in 2010, and we got this close, 48% of the vote. And so here we are in an interim year, and we realize that we can't walk away. And so we're discovering, is the district going to be whole, and what are the opportunities? So we're going to start a series of shows. We'll be filming once a month. And with me today, we have a guest.
Mike Ruby, president of New Jobs for Massachusetts. We're a pro-job growth advocacy group, and we lobby and agitate for greater job growth in Massachusetts in the private sector.
Mike, what is the biggest hurdle to increasing job growth here in Massachusetts?
The biggest hurdle to job growth in Massachusetts are the acts of government. There are three, for instance, that just jump out as changes that one would want to make to encourage private sector job growth. The first is the independent contractor rule, which affects 15 major segments of the private sector, particularly in professional services. And we have the most difficult rule in the country, the most difficult independent contractor rule in the country, and that can be changed by simply changing an "and" to an "or," and that would probably put a couple 100,000 people, allow them to start their own firms and to work as contractors and subcontractors. The second major hurdle is a tax that very few people have heard about. It's a tax on business inventories held by manufacturers or distributors. It's very unknown. Only accountants and the people that pay it know about this tax, but it's driven most of the manufacturing and distribution out of the state completely. It continues to take all our job growth and send it to other states in New England and across the Midwest that don't have the inventory tax. And the third major factor that's affecting job growth is the high minimum premiums for health care insurance. We have the most costly health insurance premiums in the country at $437 a month. We could offer, as California and Michigan do, a $50 a month premium for major medical and discount drug coverage. So those three things together, which government could change in 60 days if it wished, are the biggest contributors with the widest impact in the shortest amount of time to cure.
Well, my background is in manufacturing. Most of my customers with my business Keys Quality Systems is in manufacturing. And so I'm well aware of that problem. But what people don't realize is that although we keep hearing that we're losing manufacturing jobs here in Massachusetts, it's still the fourth largest employer. But it's unfortunate it is because it's our second, if you look at the sector of manufacturing, it's the second largest salary base. So you've got a salary base that's larger than two of the other sectors, yet it's only the fourth largest employer. So if we can increase those jobs, those are sustainable jobs. Those are jobs where people can have a strong future in Massachusetts,
yes,
have their households, and really set themselves up for their children so that they can go to college. So we need to increase manufacturing. It's something that everyone says is really the base of what manufacturing, of what Massachusetts was. But I think it really can get there again with a couple of those simple changes.
Absolutely. The opportunities for growth in this state are tremendous. The two different think tanks, one a left-leaning and one a right-leaning, got together and rated all 50 states. And Massachusetts comes out head and shoulders above all other states in the potential to create 21st century jobs.
Well, you're right. We have the institutions of higher learning. We have a lot of research and development. We have the large corporations that are around the 128 belt that are constantly redeveloping and creating new product. So the manufacturing need is there. My clients all see that. But once you get to a point where you have to do more massive, going beyond research and development, it has to go to the Midwest. It has to go south. And that's really unfortunate because those jobs, once they get the work and the manufacturing moving here in Massachusetts on a smaller level, it then has to migrate. And it's not migrating to China. It's migrating to the Midwest. It's migrating down south.
All the way to Indiana, for example.
It goes to New Hampshire.
Tom, there's a new caucus on Beacon Hill, and I wondered if you were to be elected, would you be interested? It's the Small Business Caucus.
That's the one that was just started by Representative Sean O'Connell. And there hasn't been a Small Business Caucus up at the State House. And so it's great that we have one. And of course, there should be one. it's a little surprising that there hasn't been one.
You wonder, makes you wonder,
It
doesn't it?
certainly does. Absolutely, I will join that. Like I said earlier, I've been in business for 13 years, will be 14 soon, and all of my customers are either small to mid-range companies. One is one of the largest employers in Southeastern Mass, private employers, all the way down to I've had a 3-person machine shop, actually, through my practice. And so everything in between. And they don't have a voice. You don't realize how much of a voice they don't have. It's very surprising. They do what they can to speak to a representative, but it's almost as if they just sit there and they wait for what's next, what's coming at us next time. And they all have a business manager. And the business manager, I'll sit with them, and although we're talking about efficiencies and new operations and new opportunities for the company, it always comes down to the frustration of paperwork and regulation and taxation and what it takes to hire a new individual here in Massachusetts. It's endless. Just the hiring process of a small business, you need upfront resources. You need someone in that office. So let's say you're a small business, and or you want to start a small business. How do you hire people without having a professional in your office that can get you through all of this regulation? Because if you make mistakes, you get penalized.
You get penalized triple. And not only is it triple, it's triple everything they can get their hands on.
Yes.
Unemployment insurance, pay, benefits, vacation, the workman's comp, pension, any vacation, anything. They just bulk it up and then hit the employer with it.
And small business is what drives Massachusetts.
Yes.
Most individuals are hired by a small business, not a large entity. We
have 175,000 smaller corporations total. If 80% of them were to hire 2 people, it's the equivalent of all the unemployed. Yeah. Just 2 people. 2. And yet, when you go to Beacon Hill and you talk about small business, they sort of think it's maybe a business but made of people that big. Yeah.
That there's not a lot of them. They are the majority.
They are the majority.
They need the voice. And so with your advocacy, and with Sean O'Connell starting up this new group up at Beacon Hill.
Right, and your awareness of what is, if someone says, I'm a small business person, you know that person is struggling with the barriers and the red tape, as you mentioned, and the regulations, struggling to pay their bills, pay all their people on time, and make something, by the way, that the customer wants.
And I don't think we have to have massive change to start seeing an opportunity for rehiring. We need to just make some small changes and let the owners of these businesses realize that the state is a partner in this and that they truly are a partner in moving forward. Right now, they don't believe it.
Nope.
They don't see any end in regulation or any change or, I don't want to say an advantage, but any opportunity for businesses to get some relief. And I'm not saying just financial relief, regulatory relief. I have a customer that had to go through a very expensive audit recently. And in the audit, it went further and further and further because as the auditor was looking at one area, they were connected to another group and they went somewhere else.
Were they just fishing for something?
You would think.
You hear this a lot of regulatory agencies in Massachusetts kind of trolling for trouble. Anything they'll walk into, the environmental people, the building code people, both local and state, will come in just looking for something to hit the business owner with and then get the fine. It's bounty hunting is the
term. It's a revenue stream.
Right, it's a revenue stream.
That's the difficult part. We shouldn't just make it so that when you're being audited, if anything was found, it's going to cost you. It should be that this should be taken care of.
Right.
And in the next audit and a follow-up, then penalties should come forward.
Right.
If it's a safety matter or if it's a regulatory matter. It shouldn't just be you didn't do something right, therefore it's going to cost you, because how does that benefit anyone beyond just Beacon Hill?
It sucks money out of each company that would normally be used as capital to create more new jobs.
Yes, I'm an auditor. I've been a lead auditor since '94, operational systems audits. And part of auditing is you go in and you look for objective evidence that things are working the way, you say what you do what you say, leave evidence that you did it.
Rack to record, record to rack.
There you go. But you don't see that when you see auditors coming into businesses. They're coming in almost with a laser focus looking for something specific.
Right. They come in and say, I know you're a crook because you're a business person, and so I'm going to find the crookedest thing I can get and
It's about approach.
yes.
The state needs to be a partner in this job growth, and the state will be the beneficiary of a new job. Every new job will bring more revenues into the state.
Yes.
They need to understand the economics of this.
They haven't realized that if all those million people had the jobs that they wanted, they would bring in all the money in taxes and fees that the state says is a shortfall.
Correct.
And they say, oh, it can't be enough. And yes, it is. A million people working at more money would bring in $2 billion worth of revenue.
Taxing their income, their purchases.
Right.
They're purchasing gasoline, they're doing travel. It's a constant activity out there out in the world of purchasing, and for some reason I don't understand why they cannot predictably see the result of every new hire. Therefore, invest a little, and you can move forward. They just don't see it.
Free up the regulations.
And that's my background, and should I be successful and choose to run again for the state senate, that's definitely the angle that I'll be taking.
I think that receptivity to business and its needs and the environment that it needs is absolutely crucial on Beacon Hill, because it's not there now. We're not going to get jobs growing in Massachusetts until the government understands what business needs and allows that to go forward.
Mm-hmm. And some think, I'll surmise that some think that it's all about the individuals of Massachusetts. Business is just, it's a consumer. It consumes revenue. Its business is its own entity, and therefore we're looking out for the people. But business is what's looking out for the people. I've come to see that taking a focus of having an efficient, strong business community means that the households of Massachusetts are going to benefit.
Yes.
It's going to trickle right into the households, because the households aren't just being employed by the state, although there's a lot. The households are employed by a strong business community, and looking out for business does look out for the households of Massachusetts, and that's really where we need to get to.
The state really needs to understand that it can't exist without a healthy business community,
Correct.
No matter what it does.
And it's been shrinking.
Right.
We've lost, what was it, I saw at the Associated Industries in Massachusetts, they did a report showing that a third of all of our corporate offices have left over the last 20 years.
And they've left, they were here for a good reason,
Correct.
and now they've left for a good reason.
Not that they went out of business, they went somewhere else.
Moved.
They
Yes.
took with them 250,000 jobs.
Yes.
At some point, someone has to start reversing that trend. It's still continuing.
Those are
We've seen them recently.
taxpayers.
Large anchor businesses in Massachusetts going to New Hampshire, going to Rhode Island. That's very telling.
Yes. And that's that business death and business out migration that takes all of our vitality and just, it's just like bleeding to death, basically. One of the thoughts that has come to my mind is whether more people with business experience, private sector management and operations experience, should be somehow present in the legislature to be able to reflect more of the facts. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And that is my background. Yeah, although I've spent the last 13 years in working with the towns on boards of selectmen and different commissions. I've had a business for 13 years. Again, working with manufacturing
Your own
mainly,
business.
and construction, my own business. And it's about helping these companies produce more with the same resources. Because, as you say, the regulation is just, it's engulfing these organizations, and it changes on an annual basis. They have to go through audits, they have regulation, and it's not predictable as to where they're going. And the only thing they can predict is that it's difficult. And they're always looking for opportunities in low-cost regions. We have low-cost regions just here in Massachusetts alone. If you think about some of our communities that could really use some of these jobs, yet still they go to Rhode Island, and they go to New Hampshire, and then of course they go up beyond that. So really it's our structure that's forcing manufacturing to seek alternatives for job survival.
Yes, we have, one of the issues is the changeability of Massachusetts regulation. As you pointed out, we have no idea a year from now what the regulations are going to be. You may have recalled there was a change in the regulation in July that affected the microbrewers. And this was something that for 30 years the regulation has been totally tranquil. If you wanted to start a local brewery, you went down, you got your farmer brewer permit. This is how the state allowed job growth and product proliferation and manufacturing to occur. And all of a sudden in July they said, no, we're going to not approve this new application, and not only that, we're going to apply the same strictness to all the others when their permits are up in 5 months. So what you've got now is 28 firms with 1,100 employees. They're in the middle of making investments because microbrewery is popular. People love. Look at Sam Adams. We darn near invented the craft brewing, and we invented it here, and now they can't. What, they can't even be in business in 5 months? It's just absolutely ridiculous.
It really is, and it's unfortunate. And it goes back to your original question: should we have more people up in Beacon Hill that have a background in business that can help weed through I think we can call them the unintended consequences of some of these acts? Someone may have come up with a great idea for a revenue stream for the State House, but not understand that revenue stream is now going to stop competition within Massachusetts and its bordering communities, New Hampshire and Rhode Island.
Exactly right.
They're not looking far enough. I don't think they're looking long term. They're simply looking short term.
I don't think they really understand that when they make a decision, they can't interpret that as how it's going to affect business. These people they're in charge of alcoholic beverages, and they didn't actually realize that they were requiring people to buy more than was available on the market. So it's just.
So how do we prevent this? How do we prevent these foolish regulations from getting enacted? Why is it that they go to Beacon Hill, they supposedly have a debate, yet still it gets enacted? Why is it not coming out?
I don't know. I wonder if there's something that legislators themselves can do to minimize the foolishness of the sort of regulatory regime that we're in.
Do we have enough of a voice? Not so much up at Beacon Hill, but with other organizations like what you're starting, where they can come in and say, look, these are some of the unintended consequences. Are you looking beyond just what the act is saying?
Do you think the legislators really listen when people go up and say we have a problem with business regulation?
Well, we would hope they would, but in some cases you'd have to just conclude that they're deaf ears.
One of the major regulatory hurdles that we seem to be affected by is the health insurance. And we have the most experimental health care regime in the country with what people call Romney Care, which is the mandate that Massachusetts residents buy insurance for their health, and then the state will tell them how, what the package is going to be and how much it's going to cost, and it's all arranged, and then they'll make arrangements for how it's going to be administered with the hospitals. And I just find it hard to believe that Americans that are smart enough to wire up their houses, and get on the internet and switch over are too stupid to make their own healthcare decisions.
And what's the outcome? We have the most expensive healthcare costs in the entire country.
Yes.
Although we put this plan together to get those that didn't have health care into the system. Well, a lot of people did come into the system, but there were people that were already getting health care. The problem now is that we have many more people in the system, but not more doctors. So I don't think it was fully vetted. We have a problem where households can't afford the health care cost as it is, and now we have doctors that are being squeezed by all this influx of new individuals into the healthcare system.
And this system was designed by legislators, and they're all attorneys, and they can't figure out that if you change the supply and demand relationship, that you're going to get a whole mix-up in how much is available and what price it's going to be, what volume it's going to be demanded in.
Yeah, it's I don't know what the solution to that is, except for another massive revamp of what we're doing. It's not working. We have to take another look at it.
It seems like we need to allow people to make more of their own choices for themselves. Look at what's happened in every other sector. People have driven the costs down that of what they'll buy because they want to have choices. Mm-hmm. So somehow you want to be able to unbundle what's offered as opposed to here's your health plan. That's it. That's your choice. It's going to be, for a couple, for instance, it may be $1,800 a month. Well, maybe they can't afford it. Maybe the choice is
catastrophic care.
Right.
Or some cafeteria plan where they can pick and choose instead of these one-size-fit-all plans that it's very expensive for individuals that aren't using the services. Think of a young couple. Think of a young couple in their early 20s getting this large health care plan that they're not going to use not even a percentage of it.
Right.
And they have to pay for this throughout their lives.
So we're making it very hard for young people to get hired because their costs are arbitrarily
Absolutely.
too high. And we're making it very hard for older people, if they get off the wagon, to get back into the economy. We're essentially telling our older and younger people, why don't you go to find another state where we've really figured it out.
Let me ask you a question. We have state elected leaders that are doing trade missions overseas. What is the value to a state representative or senator going overseas for trade missions?
Absolutely none. Absolutely none. When state leaders go to warm climates in cold weather looking for jobs, it's crazy. The Pioneer Institute in downtown Boston did a study last year, published it on 20 years worth of the impact on where do new jobs come from in Massachusetts and where do jobs go to when they disappear. In-migration is less than 1%. The real job growth is companies that start up here with Massachusetts people, with Massachusetts ideas, trying to make things and ideas and sell them as far around the globe as they possibly can. It's the size that they start at, which is affected by investment capital, which is affected by tax levels, and then how long they can make the company last. That is what affects job growth. So no one on Beacon Hill has to go anywhere outside Massachusetts to create jobs. The ideas are here, Tom.
We have the think tanks here in Massachusetts.
Right.
We have the wherewithal. But to think that we can bring business from outside of Massachusetts, even within the country, to bring it to Massachusetts, or from overseas to Massachusetts, I don't see it. The regulations are so thick here.
We could, if they just hacked away at the undergrowth, the natural inventiveness of Massachusetts economy will grow jobs literally beginning in weeks.
We're in our own way.
We're shooting ourselves in the hip at every opportunity. It's a major damage. We could be growing. We could be, as we used to. We used to just suck people out of upstate New York. They just used to come. They just used to drive east to Massachusetts. Once they got to past the Berkshires, they know I can get a job here, and they did. I hired them myself. I'm sure you've had experience with your clients. Same thing. It doesn't happen anymore. So there's no reason for the state leaders to go elsewhere to create jobs.
They have to look within.
They really do.
The regulations, the taxation it's a real hindrance to job growth. But we need to get that message up to Beacon Hill. We need them to embrace that message. But they could also look at the return on investment. I mean, there's equations out there where you can actually say if we reduce these certain regulations, we should have and predict an increase by this amount of population in these sectors. These are predictable things that we can do.
Yes.
This is stuff that I do with businesses. We put together long-range plans where we say, well, if we make these certain adjustments and we streamline a couple of these opportunities, we will see a return within X months or X years. It's all predictable. And it plays out every time.
Right.
But for some reason up at Beacon Hill, they're not looking past lunch.
I don't believe they are. You remember Fidelity Investments?
Oh, yes.
Fidelity has grown jobs tremendously in 40 years here. It's an innovator in its sector. It attracted a cluster of other people, and we're now treating Fidelity like dirt.
Yeah.
Why? It's the perfect business for Massachusetts. Massachusetts wants a nice, excuse me, a nice clean environment, intellectual jobs requiring smart, well-behaved people, and Fidelity is absolutely the cream of the crop. They generate wealth. It comes in the digital form of ciphers on, numbers in a computer. They manage the investments for people worldwide. They've figured out how to export services. It's a hard thing to do. Fidelity does it. And yet we drag them in sort of to a medieval torture chamber up on Beacon Hill, and we accuse them of making business decisions. Can you imagine that? a company making a business decision in its best judgment.
And you know, when you think about the communities where these office buildings were sited, and now they moved their employees to New Hampshire, to Rhode Island, to other opportunities.
Right.
And now those buildings are shuttered.
Of course.
Now, if you look at local economics, which I sat for many years on the local economic board here, what happens is that all of the pizza shops, the gas stations, the convenience stores, the grocery stores, it's the dispersion of dollars throughout the community that really keeps things going. But when you shut down one of these large office parks, all of the infrastructure around it also takes a hit. The restaurants take a hit. Therefore, they have to have layoffs. And you think about all of the vendors that have to just supply those large office buildings, and now it's closed.
Right.
You have cleaning and electricity and utilities and food service and
repairs.
It's constant.
Daycare,
so they're their own small economic little stimulus.
Yes.
And when you turn those off, it hurts those communities. So we have to really think about what we're doing, because those little changes have a large effect on the households.
Absolutely. They call it the multiplier effect, and they for private sector jobs, it's greater than 3. So one job paying $100,000 for some entry-level analyst maybe at Fidelity generates over $350,000 worth of revenue through the community.
That's right.
And where did that money come from? That money comes from all over the world into Massachusetts.
So we got to be careful with what we're doing. How do people learn more about new jobs for Massachusetts?
You can follow us on our website at newmassjobs.com, and they can get a stream of new facts about the Massachusetts economy on my Twitter account, which is VentureMike1.
Thank you all for watching. My name is Tom Keys, and I am seriously considering running for the Plymouth and Barnstable Senate seat. If you want more information on me, you can go to votekeys.com. We are going to be doing a monthly show, and I would like to thank my guests for coming.
Thank you. I want to add my thanks to Tom's. I'm Mike Ruby from New Jobs for Massachusetts. We're advocating for pro-job growth policies across the state. You can follow us on newmassjobs.com or on Twitter at VentureMike1. Thank you very much for joining us.